I'm going to be taking you all through a demo. I'm going to show you how an applicant would use RIPA to submit a lawful development certificate application, and how that application, would then be validated, assessed, and issued with a decision notice on BOPS. And the development that I'm going to take you through is going to be the subdivision of a single house into 2 flats. And we're going to pretend that that's happened more than 10 years ago, and that the owner now wants to confirm immunity from enforcement by applying for a certificate. So this is the first page you see on RIPA. So I'm prompted to put in the postcode for my address. And once I've done that, it's going to bring up a preset list of addresses for that postcode. So that's going to reduce the chance of me putting in any incorrect addresses. So this is the one that I want to go for. I'm going to continue, and it's going to fetch property information for me. So like Michael said, we have the GIS data input for, in this case, Southwark. So it's showing me here on the screen a grey outline on my site. So I can zoom in, I can zoom out to see the context of the site, and I'm just confirming the address here. I can see my district of Southwark. This building type field, it's empty at the moment, but in the future we're going to work out how that can show, for example, that this is a mid-terrace property. So that would be a really good feature. And then down here we have the planning constraints. So again, this is input by the GIS data, so I can see here anything that might affect my projects. At the moment, this list is only relevant to LDC applications, but as RIPA grows, we will expand this list to include constraints that might apply to householder or other minor development types. This is a really useful feature because it means that the applicant doesn't need to search this for themselves, and it reduces the chance that they might maybe look at Southwark maps, for example, and actually get the wrong information from there. So you can see here there's nothing affecting my site, so I'm going to go ahead and continue here. Then this next page prompts me to consider searching the planning history for my property before I proceed with the application. And this is because some properties might have restricted PD rights, or they might have been extended or undergone other works in the past, which the current owner might not be aware of. So here we've got a link to Southwark's planning register. So the applicant can just come out and they can search that themselves. But we are working on how we can actually build this into RIPA and into BOPS to reduce the need for the applicant to have to do that themselves. So we can imagine that I've already checked, there's been no previous works at the property, so I'm going to continue. And I'm then prompted to draw the site outline. And this will result in a digital site map. So we've got plenty of guidance on how to do this for the applicant here. So we have a step-by-step guide of exactly how to draw that boundary and what should be included within the boundary. And then we also have a link to the relevant legislation. So you'll notice on most of the pages, we have got that help button for anyone that needs it. So I'm just going to zoom into my property, and I simply click at the 4 points that I want to draw my site outline. And then that fills it in for me. It confirms the area of my site, which is really useful for the applicant and also for the case officer when that information gets pulled through onto BOPS. And I have got the option here to upload a PDF sitemap as well if I want to. So now I'm going to be asked questions about the actual project. So the first thing I'm asked is it a proposed change or an existing change? So because we're looking at a immunity case, I'm going to go for existing changes I've made here. And then this is a really important page for RIPA, so listing all the changes involved in the project. So we've got loads of options here. We've tried to carefully think them out to avoid any duplication, but we have also taken into account that different people might phrase works in different ways. So for example, for this case, we're looking at a house that's been turned into flats. So I've got a few different options here. I can select subdivide a house into flats. I can select change the use of part of a property. So people might understand this in different ways. But the option that I'm going to go for is going to be convert a house into flats. And that's then going to influence the rest of the questions that I'm asked during my application journey. So all these questions are then tailored towards those works. So I'm going to say, yes, there was a new flat created on the site because it went from 1 home to 2 flats. It's asking me about the 4-year rule. So it's saying, has it been in constant use as 2 flats for 4 years? And if I was an applicant who didn't understand why I was being asked that, I can just click on the question mark, and I've got the source through to the legislation explaining why I've been asked that question. So for this case, I'm happy to select yes. And it's asking me, has anyone tried to conceal those changes? So again, that's another important aspect of achieving immunity. I can select here to read a bit more about why I'm being asked that. And I'm going to go ahead and say no. So we do sort of depend on the honesty of the applicant here. But of course, when it comes through to BOPS, the case officer will check all the details anyway. So I'm going to select no here. And then for the date, I'm just going to go in and say 1st of January 2010. So put a good 10-year length of time there. Then the applicant is prompted to describe the project. And there is the option for the officer, of course, to change this in BOPS, but we give the applicant a chance to fill this in here. And we've got some examples of what they should write here to kind of explain how much detail they're expected to go into. So a couple more questions about the site. So what type of property is it? I'm going to say it's a house. And I have turned it into 2 flats. So the tense of the sentence, kind of we keep it in the present tense just to keep it simple. So I'm going to select, I've changed my 1 house into 2 flats here. And there weren't any other physical alterations to the building. I'm going to say no, just keep it simple. So then it's going to start asking me questions about myself as the applicant. So I'm applying as the applicant. I could apply as an agent, but just for this demo, we're just going to stick with the applicant route. And I'm a private individual, but I have got other options here that might be more relevant to other development types. I'm just going to use a test name for these questions here because that will help us to distinguish this application for any of the real cases that we have got on BOPS at the moment. I'm going to say, yes, my contact address is the same as property address. If I said no, I'd have the option to put another address in at this point. And then for the email address, I'm going to use my own email address because I want to show you the type of notifications that the applicant receives during the application and assessment process. I'll just put in a fake phone number here. And I'm going to say the officer should contact me if they want to arrange a site visit. Okay, so now we go on to ownership. So we've tried to approach this in quite a simple way. So instead of asking for any specific ownership certificate, we're simply asking the applicant to select which of these best describes their interest in the land. So we have got some more help here. We've really clearly defined what is owner, what is land, and what you should do, for example, if you're a married couple. And I'm going to go with sole owner for this question. And now I'm prompted to start uploading my drawings. So because this is an immunity case, RIPA has got a preset list of the type of documents we would normally expect to see for this type of application. And for this case, I'm going to go with council tax documents and tenancy agreements, but there are several other options here that you might recognise if you've done LDC applications before. So different types of official documents that we would expect to come in with an existing LDC application. But I think 2 is sufficient. So I'm first asked to upload my council tax documents because that's what I ticked first in the list. So I've got everything ready here. And I'm going to select council tax records of flat 1 and 2, and I can simply drag these in. If I wanted to, I could also select to choose a file, but I find it quite useful just dragging them in. We accept PDF, JPEGs, or PNG docs here, and the max size is 30 megabytes, so quite large sizes can be uploaded at once. It's then asking me to describe this. This is just a bit of information for the officer when it comes through onto BOPS. So I'm just going to say it's my council tax records from January 2010 to present day. And then I'm asked to do the same for my tenancy agreements. Now for this demo, I'm going to only upload one of them because I want to show you how the validation team would respond if they did notice that something was missing. So for example, we would expect flat 1 and 2 agreements to be here, but I'm just going to upload flat 1. And I'm going to say these show tenancy agreements, nice and simple. And then I'm prompted to submit my floor plan. So this is unit plans before any of the works took place. So I've got that prepared here. I've got my historic floor plans here. And then unit plans after. So I've got my existing floor plans prepared already. I'm not being asked for any elevations because I didn't say that any external works took place to the property. Then I'm prompted, is there anything else that I want to submit? For example, a location plan, I'm going to say no here because I've already drawn my red line boundary, which I think is sufficient. Any additional drawings, again, I'm going to say no, but if people did have other things they wanted to submit, for example, a cover letter, they could put that in here. Okay, so into the about your application section. So this information is all used to work out the correct fee. So I'm going to say for this question that yes, because it created one new flat and there are 50 or fewer homes on the site. And there's been 2 homes. So we have the existing flat, or we have the one house, there's now 2 flats, there's 2 homes on the site. So again, these questions are just relevant to the fees. Is it for disabled access? No, it is not. Is it a resubmission? No, it is not. And I'm going to say there's no more applications for that site that are going to be submitted at the same time. Okay, so this I can just scroll through this, make sure everything's correct. I can check the documents that I've uploaded if I want to. And if I'm happy with all that, I can continue. I've just got 2 more questions. So any connections with the council? I'm going to say no. Why have we asked that? We've explained it here. And then just my declaration that everything is truthful and accurate. And once I've done that, it's given me the fee. The RIPA's worked out the correct fee based on the information that I provided. If I want any more details, I have got a link here about how the fees are calculated, and I can pay using GovPay. So we have got some dummy payment details I'm just going to input here, not my own details. I don't want to go ahead and pay for this fee using my own card. Just going to say test, and my card security code, and I'll just use Southwark offices as the address and put my own email in here. So really, really simple payment system, really easy to follow. And that's all powered by GovPay. So here's my summary. I'm going to confirm that payment. And it's then going to bring me through to this final page that confirms that my application has been submitted. It gives me my receipt for GovPay, and it explains what I can expect to happen next. So I can look at different stages of when I might be contacted by the council. If I have got any more questions, I've got contact details here for my council. And that's everything done. So you can see it's really quick, really easy to submit my case through RIPA. So I don't know if we want to take any questions about RIPA now, if anyone has got any, or I can move straight on to BOPS.
Anyone in the room have any questions before we move on? So that's all the front end, that's the full applicant journey. So we'll move on to the officer journey next if there aren't any questions, but feel free to shout in the chat, or just feel free to shout out now. Like I said, there will be time at the end if people are happy to continue.
Looks like everyone.
I reckon you can carry on, Freya. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I'm just going to show you the emails that have been sent out from RIPA based on the application. So this is the receipt that I've received to confirm that my application was successful. And then this is another email that I've received to confirm that the application has gone through to BOPS, but it does state that it's not been made valid yet. And it gives me a date by which I should contact the council if I've not received any contact. So let's go back on to BOPS. So you can see here that my application has come through, just this top one here. So this is the landing page for BOPS. You can see we've got different columns where different cases can be located. So we have the not started column for any cases that haven't been made valid yet. We then have the assessment column for cases which are currently undergoing assessment by case officers. Awaiting determination is when they've been sent to the manager with a recommendation. And then we have the closed column for any of the cases that have been granted or refused or withdrawn. And for each application, we've listed the number, the site address, the type of application, and then we have the target day and the days left as well. We've not got any plan officer data in at the moment just because this is a testing version of the system, but usually that would have all the officer names input, and then the officer could select just their own applications to look at from this list. Okay, so let's go in and open up the case that I've just submitted. And this is what the case file looks like. So I've got down here instructions on the different stages that I need to follow. And up here, I've got all these tabs with different headings. So I'll just go through these before we start the validation process. So under application information, I've got the description that was entered by the applicant and the application type. I can look up the address on Google Maps. If I click that link, it will take me straight through to this address on Google Maps. So it's really useful. If, for example, you can't do a site visit, you can go and look at Street View on there. I've got my payment reference and the payment amount. I can close that for now. Here you're going to recognise that digital sitemap that I drew, and we've got a scale bar on it. So we are looking at bringing the scale bar into the RIPA version as well, but at the moment we've just put it onto BOPS. And as I zoom in, you'll see that that scale bar changes. I can close that for now. The result from API user tab. So this basically means the result that RIPA gave to the application. So what that means is that if I put in any answers to questions that RIPA recognises, meaning that it wouldn't be permitted development, then during the application process, I would actually be informed of that, and I'd be given the chance to either apply for prior approval, for example, or to just not apply at all and to be brought through to the council's website to make a different application type. But I can see here that it's telling me that RIPA thought that this would be PD, so it would be immune from enforcement. And it has got the caveat here that this does not apply if the changes have been concealed, for example. The proposal detail section includes all the answers that the applicant provided during the application process. You might recognise some of these that we were just looking at. At the moment, it's all disappearing as one long list. We are working on breaking this down into sections so that it's easier for the officers to go through, but that's all under this tab. We'll look at the Documents tab in a moment. We've got the Constraints tab, so it's saying that nothing was identified by RIPA, but if I did want to update that, I've got the option just to come through, and I've got a list here of all the different constraints that might be in place. My key application date, my contact information, and then just a confirmation that no consultation is required for this application. Okay, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to start the validation process for this case. So imagine I'm a validation officer who's just received this application. It's not been marked valid or invalid yet, and I'm prompted to check the documents. So I'm going to go into my documents here. This is the document management page. So you can see here everything that I submitted on RIPA, and you can see that there's tags that have been auto-generated by RIPA. If I want to open up a document, I can just click on the thumbnail, and because this is a demo, it's just a demo PDF here, but normally that would have, for example, council tax evidence. And then for each document, so if we imagine that I'm still doing validation, I can choose to edit the document, and I can come through and I can make any changes. So I can change the tags, I can change the evidence type, I can select if it's valid, so I'm going to say yes for this one. And I can add a reference. I have two questions here. Should it be on the decision notice? I'm not going to answer that yet because I'm just the validation officer. Should it be made public? I'm going to say no for this one just because it might have some personal information, but there is the option to add it to the planning register there. So let's quickly run through this. Add these tags. And then at this point, I've noticed that I've only been submitted with one tenancy agreement. So I'm going to make a note of that. You can see just got one agreement here. And I'll show you in a few moments what I can do to request that missing document through the system. Let's do this. Floor plan 1. I will make the floor plan public because there's no personal information in there. And floor plan 2. Make that public. So what's really great about this is that for anyone who does use Uniform and IDMS, they can operate as two separate systems, but on BOPS. Everything's just within this one system. So it's really easy for me as the officer to go in there without having to fiddle between different systems. Okay, so I'm happy that all of the submitted plans are valid, but remember I am missing a tenancy agreement. So I'm not happy to make this valid yet. What I'm going to do is ask for that missing agreement. So if I come onto this page, I can start a new validation request. And when I go onto there, I'm told that I can add requests and that they'll be sent through to the applicant. So if I select to add a new request, we've got here a list of the typical reasons that a case might not be found valid. So for example, issues with the red line boundary, issues with the fee that could fall under request other changes. If a plan maybe wasn't to scale, then I could request a replacement. But for this example, we're going to request a new document. And I'm going to put in some details here for the applicant. I'm going to say, I require tenancy agreement flat 2. And I've just put in a bit of details about why I need that here. So then if I click send and I come back onto my validation request page, you can see that that's been added and that there's a status of 15 working days for that request. If I wanted to add any more, I could do that using this button, but this is the only one that is making the case invalid. So let's make that invalid here. And it confirms to me that it's been made invalid and that an email has been sent through to the applicant. So if I just come back into my inbox, you can see straight away this email has come through and it explains to me that my application has been received, but that unfortunately it's not been made valid, so it's not yet been registered. And it tells me if I want to view why it's not valid, to follow this link below. Let's paste that into my browser. So then this is what the applicant sees. And it informs me that if I don't respond within 15 days, and it gives me a date that the application will be returned, and it explains to me with bullet point details what I need to do. So here I need to provide that missing tenancy agreement. So I select to simply upload the missing file. Let me just go through, find that. Here we go, tenancy agreement for flat 2. And then when I submit that, it's then going to confirm to me that that step is now complete. So there's nothing more that I need to do to make the case valid. So if I refresh my BOPS page, it should now tell me that I have received this. So yeah, so it's now saying status for that request. There's been a response. This is the agreement that I've received. And if I go back through to my documents, and I scroll down, I can see that that agreement has come straight through into the document. So I can add my tags to that now. PHP for this one. And I can save that. So now I've got all of my valid plans. I've checked my fee, and I'm happy to make this case valid. So I just clicked validate application, and an email has been sent to the applicant to confirm that that's been made valid. So the next thing we're going to do is the assessment. And this assess against policy feature is a brand new feature on BOPS. So I won't go into too much detail here because it's not really relevant to this journey that I'm doing. But the way that this would work is, say, for example, I was looking at an extension to a household and I was applying for PD for that extension. Then I just select the schedule and the part and the class. I go through and that gets added to the case. And when I select the legislation for that class, and I can confirm whether or not the development complies or does not comply with that part of the legislation. So it's a really great feature. It's brand new. We've just put this in BOPS literally this week. But for this journey, it's not relevant. So I'm going to remove it and just go back to the application page. I'm going to skip this part and just go on to assess proposal. Okay, so I'm now asked, so I'm the case officer now, and I'm asked, is the use lawful? And I'm asked to give a reason why or why it may not be lawful. and also asked to give any additional information for my manager. So if we imagine at this point that I have reviewed the plans, I've taken a look at the site on Google Maps, I've maybe done a site visit, I've reviewed all of my proposal details, all the answers that the applicant provided on RIPA, and I've reviewed the local constraints. And so in this instance, I'm happy to recommend that the certificate should be approved. So I can select yes, it is lawful. For the reasons why it is lawful, I'm informed that the information will appear on the decision notice. So I'm going to make reference to the legislation here. So I've just got that pre-prepared here. And then I'm asked to give my supporting information for my manager. So I'm just going to confirm to my manager that I've reviewed everything and explain the rationale behind my assessment. Okay, so that's all been saved, and I can now proceed to submit my recommendation. And I'm then shown a draft decision notice. So it's got here that text that I just input on why it is lawful, but it looks like I've forgotten to add my plans to the decision notice. Let's go back and add all of these. So I'm back in the Manage Documents screen. And now that I've done my assessment, I'm happy to add all of these documents to the decision notice. So I just go into edit for each document and I select yes, I do want to add that to the notice. Yes. And then what you'll see once I've done this and I go back into that draft decision notice is that these will then appear in the list on that notice. I've just got two more. Got my existing floor plan and I've got my tenancy agreement down here. Okay, so I've added them all. So I'm going to go back to my submit recommendation page. And now you'll be able to see that all of those plans have been added to the decision notice. I've got my digital site plan down here, and I'm happy to go ahead and submit that recommendation to my manager. So I'm now going to switch to the manager version of BOPS. You see it's slightly different to the case officer version. So instead of having my own caseload, I've got cases awaiting the determination. I've got cases where I might have requested any changes, and I've got the closed cases as well. And this is our case up at the top, so I can open that up. And I can see that all of these steps have been completed, and that the next step is just to review the assessment. So here's that text that I input during the assessment part of the process. So the officer's recommended it's granted. It's got the text that I put onto the decision notice, and then it has that additional text that is just for the manager to look at. So if we imagine that as the manager, I've read through all this, I've assessed, for example, the plans again myself, and I agree with the officer's recommendation. So I'm just going to say, yes, I agree with the recommendation. And if I save that, I'm then given one more opportunity to review the decision notice. So here it is again. So I've got all the details that I need on this notice. Just to show you one more thing before I do actually determine the application, that Michael already mentioned is this audit log, which I can access here. So if we imagine, for example, that the original case officer for the application, that they were ill or that it got reassigned to a different officer, anyone using BOPS can come in here and they can see different things have been done to the application, and they can see what date that happened and who made that change. It's a really useful feature, and it will cut back on people having to email each other or just not knowing about certain things that happened with the case. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's publish this, and I'll just show you what the applicant receives once I do that. So it's confirmed to me that that notice has now been sent out to the applicant, and if I come back onto the home screen and I go into my closed cases, then you're going to see that that's now appeared as granted in my list. And if I come into my emails, then here we go. So we're still working on text for this notification, but we have got the link here that we need. So rather than send the decision notice as a PDF, we send it as a link. And if I come through into here, then it's that same notice. I've got all my plans listed here. We're working on getting the site location put in here as well. And I'm happy with that. So that is the end-to-end process. You can see it's really quick. Hopefully it's really simple.